Okay, so here we've got our new axle bearing puller set, and here is our new axle bearing that's going to be going into the Ranger. To pull the old ones, we want to make the right size puller, so we want to have a look and find one that's got the right circumference for this bearing. And that one looks a little big, but this one looks probably like it's the right one. So that's probably our puller. It's rated as a 1 inch to 1 7/8 inch, and it certainly covers the inside of the bearing housing pretty well. So that's probably going to be the one that'll fit nicely through the axle and give us the leverage to pull on our old bearings. So we're going to take that and we're going to attach that to our slide hammer, which should give us the pulling power to hammer that old bearing out. Okay, it's time to take our old bearing seal and axle bearings out with our pry bar. Needs a little persuasion. There we go. You can see her coming there now. And we'll just work it out from both sides. So we'll go on top. There we go. It's popping loose now. Just work our way around, all the way around. And you can see she's loose. I just don't want to put too much leverage on any one side. Just work it out. And boof, there she is. Just pops right out. Definitely some corrosion on the edges of that. It was in there quite a while, but the pry bar does the trick. And there's our bearing just inside. Okay, we've got our bearing puller, which we're going to slide into the axle. It just angles in, and then once it's inside, it straightens out and seats itself against the back of the bearing. And then all we do is we tighten up this nut, which pushes up against, it's got a big washer that pushes up and I guess just protects the old bearing. This nut just basically is gonna just keep everything nice and solid while we're hammering, and so when the slide hammer's going in, it stops your slide hammer from sliding in. Keeps everything as one solid piece together while we're hammering. The hammering is an outside motion, so we just slide the hammer in and pull back. And you can see she's coming. She's almost out now. And boof, nothing to it. So that was nicely seated just on the inside of the bearing. Gave us a good surface to pull against, and out she came. So just give things a good little wipe down on the inside of the axle, and she'll be ready for the new bearing. Okay, just a quick orientation. So here is our new bearing. And there doesn't seem to be an orientation for the outside of this bearing, other than there is lettering on the bearing, which on the old bearings the lettering was facing out on the axle. So I'm going to keep that orientation the same, but I don't see any difference in terms of a seal that's different on one side of this bearing or the other. So I'm just going to keep the orientation with the lettering facing to the outside of the axle. And that should make sure everything goes back in the way the old ones came out. Alright, we have our new bearing ready to go in. Now, I don't know that there's any rule that you can't use your bearing puller as a bearing pusher to tap your new bearing in. So I've put the new bearing on the bearing puller on my slide hammer. It's got a nice washer that's the same circumference as the outer portion of the bearing, so as I tap it in with the hammer, that should provide nice even force. It's just nicely positioned on our puller. So let's try that. So in we go with the new bearing there, and we'll just gonna lightly tap it inward. Until it pretty much stops, and we'll just undo the nut and take our puller out. See if the bearing looks like it's happy in there. So out comes our puller, and our new bearing is in there, and I think she's in there right in where she needs to be, tapped in nice and evenly right into the flange, and looks like she's good to go. Then we're gonna just give it a little grease. We could have preloaded it with grease, but it would have been muckier when I was installing it, so I'm gonna just grease it up now that it's in place. And that's going to help to keep it nicely lubed up until the gear oil pretty much takes over in there. The new gear oil will largely do the job, but we want to have that lubed up so when it first gets rolling it is well lubricated. So just roll that grease around in there so it's nicely ready to go. And then we can put our seal in and seal up this side. Okay, we've got our new bearing seal ready to go. So that's going to go the outside of our axle bearing, flat side out. It's going to just go on the outside there. Kind of find a place where it wants to kind of sit to start, and then you can use a block of wood to kind of put an even pressure as you tap it in. And away it goes. And the block of wood gives a nice even pressure all the way across the surface of the seal. And just till it's flush with the end of the axle, and she's good to go.